What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the You Know Ball podcast. I am your host, Troll Bro Dude, and please forgive me for my appearance. I literally just woke up, but I needed to get this out there today. Recorded this episode with Zoe last night, and I just wanted to thank everyone who supported the podcast. Whether you have listened to the podcast, shared the podcast, watched the podcast on YouTube, whether you have bought merch, whether you have donated to the Square, everything has been so amazing this season. The podcast has given me a new outlook on life. It has given me more of a sense of purpose. I talked all about this on Twitter the other day. It's really just been amazing how much support that I've gotten through the podcast. The community that we've built has been really, really cool. And I hope to continue that through the offseason into next season. You know, we just hit over 100,000 listens recently, which is absolutely crazy. And that doesn't even count all the views we get on YouTube as well. So if you added that in, it's way more. It's just been absolutely amazing. And I can't thank you enough for your support. Thank you to Last Out Media, who helped us land our first sponsor recently, Philly Sports Trips, which is coming later in the episode. You'll hear that. But we're planning something really cool with them as well. So keep an eye out for that on Twitter, and you'll hear it on the podcast as well. But now we're getting to the fun part of it, right? We're getting to the trade slop, which we already have a piece of that we talk about at the top of this episode. We're getting to the free agency stuff. I'll have Marty Teller on later this week to discuss our outlook on the season, our plans, our ideas for what the team can be next season as we enter the next phase of the Joel Embiid Sixers, which could possibly be the final phase, which is scary and fun. And the stakes are extremely high because I think the next 2 to 3 years is really the window with Joel Embiid while he's still remotely in his prime, while he's hopefully, knock on wood, healthy. And I just look forward to kind of going through this journey with you guys and, bringing that slop, baby. Bring the fucking slop. If you haven't already, you can donate to the Square. You can support us. In link down in the description. By the way, you can buy. I have the Maxey Better Sad. If you're watching on YouTube, Maxey Better Sadly mug that I'm drinking coffee out of right now. You can buy that. You can share the podcast as always. You can like us on YouTube. You can review us on your favorite podcast platform. And once again, please, please, please support Philly Sports Trips if you can. We're going to try to do a few trips with them in the fall for the Eagles and the Sixers, as I mentioned. And I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And I just want to kind of take the podcast to the next level in terms of doing stuff with you guys in person. So like we've done the one live event. We've done all of the YouTube live streams. We've done a lot of digital stuff, but I want to start next season this off season into next season, start doing stuff in person, hanging out with you guys, getting to know you guys better. And so just let me know if you have any ideas for some things that we can do. You can always DM me. My DMs are open on Twitter at TrillBroDude. You can tweet at me. You can comment on the YouTube. You can remember to like this video, please. You can do whatever to reach out to me. And I always appreciate your feedback. And I'm always trying to make the podcast better. I'm always trying to make this experience better, this community better. And once again, thank you so, so, so much for your support. And I'm really looking forward to this offseason. Not only because it's just like a nice mental break from the Sixers, but we now have time to focus on the things that are going to affect the team next year without actually having to sit through and watch the team, which is my favorite part of all this, as I mentioned on this episode. So thank you to Zoe for joining me today, and enjoy the episode. And I'll talk to you guys later this week. What's going on, guys? I am very excited to announce that Philly Sports Trips is now the official travel partner of the You Know Ball podcast. The biggest reason why I've partnered with Philly Sports Trips is really simple. I give them my money. I have a mini vacation that involves the Sixers, Eagles, and Phillies, and I don't have to lift a finger to plan anything. I can party as light as I want or as hard as I want, and Philly Sports Trips takes care of everything that I hate. The planning, the organizing, researching where to go, and I get a 5-star hotel, non-crazy flight schedules, and tailgates that have unbelievable food and booze, and most importantly, it's a douchebag-free zone. These are just some of the many reasons that I am excited to partner with Philly Sports Trip. I can't wait to go on a Sixers trip next season, and Uniball is absolutely going on the road to at least one Eagles game. So let me know which Eagles game you would want to go to, and I would love to do a huge Uniball road trip. Out of all the cities, I'm thinking New York or Chicago, but I want to know what you guys think as well. So tweet at me at TrillBroDude, DM me, comment on the YouTube, and let me know which Eagles game you guys think we should go as a group this season. Phillies and Eagles trips are booking right now. So head over to phillysportstrips.com and let them know that Uniball sent you for two very important reasons. Not only does it help fund the podcast, but we'll have VIP events and goodies specifically just for Uniball listeners. phillysportstrips.com, premium travel for every Philly sports fan, and a proud sponsor of the Uniball podcast. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Uniball podcast. I am your host, TrillBroDude, and today I am excited to have back onto the podcast for the third time from Rights to Ricky Sanchez, the Corner 3 newsletter. The price is always going up. What's up, Zoe? How you doing?
What's up, bro? How you doing, man?
I'm feeling great. I've coped fully. The Sixers season is over, and now I get to do the fun part of the job, which is talk about what the team might look like. Watching the team can be truthfully excruciating at certain points, but actually envisioning what the team can become, now that's fun. And that's why we love the fucking offseason. That's why we love Slop season. That's why we love all this shit. So I'm glad to have you on because we got a piece of Slop that dropped today. I'm assuming you saw the Windhorst news.
1000%, dude. Yeah. Yep. I saw it. It's funny. I was actually on my way to the gym from work, and I'm changing my clothes, and I see the tweet people are sharing and the YouTube clip, and I was just like, "This is perfect." I knew I was coming on here, and I was like, "This is perfect. This couldn't have dropped at a better time."
A Slop drop right before the pod is like, I mean, this is basically Christmas for me. I've completely forgotten about Matisse Thybulle and James Harden's second half performance and Doc Rivers making me go insane, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And now we have this piece of Slop from the Deal Zone King, the Slop Master General himself, Brian Windhorst, comes out today and says, basically, he's hinting at the fact that Daryl Morey is still gunning for another star, which has always been Morey's MO, but it is worth noting that Morey's MO was always gunning for a star when he had one superstar. That was generally the case. Got Dwight Howard when he had James Harden. He got Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, all that stuff. He never really had a team that had three stars around it, except for if you count that one time they got the wash Carmelo Anthony in Houston. But the majority of the time, he was really just bringing in two stars. So this would be a little bit off of the beaten path for him. But in that piece, you watched it, and the weird thing to me was like he was talking about Tobias Harris in a trade, and he was like, they think they can get value back for Tobias, which I'm like, look, Tobias was great in most of those games in the playoffs. He was definitely not the reason we lost in the playoffs.
Yeah.
But he still makes $40 million next year. And I don't think that any team is itching necessarily to pay Tobias Harris, the 59th best player in the NBA, $40 million next year. I don't think that's like in someone's plan. But the part that did throw me off a little bit about it was the fact that he mentioned that Maxey could be potentially included in a deal. And I know you and me have both felt very, very strongly about Tyrese Maxey and about not moving him because it's just bad basketball karma. It's just not what like he's a good dude. He's on the rise. He's on a rookie contract. Everyone loves him. Great locker room guy. He's a dog. He's a hooper. What else could you want? Like, I honestly am to the point where I almost wouldn't trade Tyrese Maxey for like, there's a very, very short list of players that would trade him for. I'll leave it like that.
Even so, it's so funny you mentioned that because I played a similar game with Spike.
I heard that.
And well, then you heard it. It was funny because he was like, dude, this game is going the complete opposite than I thought. Because I literally gave him, I was like, dude, there's like maybe like four guys I would trade him for right now, right? And it's the truth, man. I agree wholeheartedly. one, it's bad basketball karma, and two, I just think it's bad basketball business. you, he is even Greeny. Greeny was like, what are you even talking about? Like when Wendy mentioned it, he was like, he's 21, and he's a guy on the rise, right? Like he's not just like a friend where they hope he takes the lead. Like he's taking the lead. So I am very interested. I know Wendy's mentioned that like he would get in a lot of trouble if he brought names into it, which is totally fine. Like ask him this question again on draft night, and he'll bring names into it. It's obviously it's different because we still have the lottery tomorrow, and then people are still trying to figure out draft strategy, whatever. But I feel like if they ask that question on draft night, we'll start getting more names. But I was actually pretty shocked. I was shocked to hear that they still think that Maxey is gettable because I don't think that they should move him at all. Unless I was even semi on the fence about a Dame trade, and now I'm just like, no way would I give him up for Dame. I wouldn't give him up for a bunch of people, like not anybody on the Suns. Like if the Suns break it up and one of that core becomes available, I wouldn't do that. I think that we'd have to have a serious conversation maybe about. I think I know where he's going. I think it's going toward one of or three of the Levine, Spider, and Bill, head. And we'd have to have a serious conversation about all three of those guys because I had them ranked a little weirdly depending on what day it is. So
right, exactly. But it's also worth noting they're in different situations because I just want to put it into context. If the Sixers really have this, and this is all around the speculation of James Harden taking a pay cut. My theory is that, and this was, by the way, this was said immediately when the trade happened. This was like, I've been doing this conspiracy shit about this since a week after the James Harden trade happened because these rumors got out there. And now it feels more likely that Harden would take a pay cut only because I don't think there's another team out there that would just give him a max contract. And we at least had that possibility, like, well, what if he comes in and we make an Eastern Conference Finals run or a Finals run and he looks awesome and then the team turns around and goes, we don't want to pay him the max. That is where you would have had a weird situation. But because the season ended the way it did, because he looked the way that he looked, he's probably, my guess is that it's a deal that's similar to Chris Paul's deal, funny enough, that we'll talk about Chris Paul a little bit later. But it's similar to the Chris Paul deal where Chris Paul was making $45 million in the last year of his deal, but he opted out and then he signed a 3-year, $90 million extension. So you're paying him like $30 million a year, but you're paying him less per year, but you're giving him 3 guaranteed years.
Yeah, 3 guaranteed years,
Right. So my point here is that if he does that, and the Sixers can get off the Tobias Harris contract by including the 2 first-round picks that they have remaining, they can just sign Zach LaVine or Bradley Beal. There's no point in trading Tyrese Maxey for him. And if you're trading Tyrese Maxey, it has to be for some of the guys that you mentioned. It would have to be for a Dame, a Book, a Mitchell, one of these guys that's like a clear top 20 player that is someone that you can plug in and be a creator next to James Harden and Joel Embiid. Can kind of work off of those two well. Those guys are all really good shooters, except for, obviously, Beal's in a different situation, but like Beal's kind of not as good of a shooter as he once was. But once again, Beal or LaVine, you can just get in free agency. So I think I have a theory on this. The 2 guys that I think that it could possibly be, because like, I think that once again, bad basketball karma. I don't want to trade Tyrese Maxey. I'd rather lose with Tyrese Maxey than win with some guys. Like that's kind of how I feel right now. And like, there's one guy that you said on there that I probably would. I definitely would trade him for Luka. And I know that you were being a little bit tongue in cheek, but at the same time, like, obviously Luka could like be the best player in the NBA like next season. Like he might be right now. He's been amazing.
Yeah, like maybe in 3 weeks he may be the best player in basketball.
Yeah, exactly. But at the end of the finals, then we're in the Luka era. We were in the Giannis era last year, and then we're in the Luka era, and then whoever wins next year, maybe after that. But my whole point on this is like, I've been thinking about what Windhorst said because you brought up the draft lottery thing. Because the draft lottery thing is interesting because I'm thinking, who would be affected by the draft lottery? Because like the Jazz aren't in the draft lottery, the Suns aren't in the draft lottery, the Wizards are, but once again, the Sixers could just sign him outright.
Yeah.
Wouldn't even matter, right?
Right.
The two teams that I think that would be affected by the draft lottery thing would be the Trailblazers, of course, because the Blazers are high up, of course. And then there is the other team, which is kind of this mystery team that has been linked to a Tobias Harris trade, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder.
Yeah.
And the reason I say Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is because, and I know I've brought up Shai before, and maybe this is just a long shot. This is still my long shot pick for this. But the reason I say this is because if the Thunder don't get a top 5 pick for like the third straight season, and they're saying, fuck, we just tanked for all of this, and now we're going to get another high pick. We're probably going to be too good to tank in 2023 when the top of the draft is Victor Wembanyama and Scoot Henderson, and it's this packed top of the draft. It's way better than this year's draft. He might say, how can I get something back for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, maybe a prospect like Tyrese Maxey and some future picks, and then we can tank again next year. And Maxey's kind of in a similar mold to Shai. Like they're kind of similar players. Shai's a little bit further along in his development. Yeah. He's a little bit better as a primary guy, but like they're
he's probably a better shooter at this rate too. Well, probably a tad bit better shooter.
Maxey's a better shooter than Shai is right now by the numbers. Like I would say Shai is better Shai's better with the ball in his hands than Maxey is.
Yeah.
Driving, creating his own offense. He's much
aesthetically. Yes. That's what I'm getting at. Aesthetically, he looks like he's a better shooter than Maxey, but Maxey's a better shooter.
You could also put the ball in his hands and have him run an offense. Maxey is much better in the role that we have him in now, which is working off the ball with James Harden and Joel Embiid. But like at the end of a game, you'd rather have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander with the ball.
Yeah. So and it's funny because that's and it's ironic too because they're both Kentucky guys, but that is the mold of the Kentucky guy. Like Kyle gets those guys in and he lets them do what they do, but he pushes them to be the best at it, right? So Maxey was there with Manny quickly. So like Manny ran the offense for them. So all Maxey had to do was play off ball, right? So like, and they didn't have the tournament. So like Maxey never even got a chance to run the offense because like he was playing off ball the whole time there. So like, yes, you can see the growing pains when he's trying to run an offense. And there's the reverse for SGA. SGA got here ironically with Doc, and then they kind of had to mold him into that, play both sides, off ball, on ball, so on and so forth. So like I think the reason that those guys excel so well is because Kyle lets them be what they already are. He's like, all right, look, like he told Maxey, like, all right, like you are a daredevil burner. Like, do what you do. Manny's gonna run the offense. You play off ball, and you just let it fly when you let it fly. And like you can just see how Maxey benefited from it. So I think that goes back to, you made a point a while ago about like why it's so important to draft blue bloods. It's the truth. Like those guys are they're built different and they're coached different. Like it matters. I mean, you can find talent anywhere, but the blue bloods are the blue bloods for a reason.
Exactly. And the outliers for that are the once in a generation type guy. Like the Ja Morant is the outlier for that general rule. Yes. Like, you know what I mean? Guys that are high recruits, guys that are coached in these systems by college coaches that are, like I say it like this, like if a guy is total shit in college and he goes to a big school, like whatever, 99 times out of 100, he's going to suck in the NBA.
Yep.
But if he shows you just a little bit, even like Maxey struggled with certain things in his year at college, but man, in his first game ever, he shot a logo 3 to win the game. And in like at the Garden, like high stakes, like you can see from a young age with certain guys, and Shai and Maxey kind of both had similar situations coming out of Kentucky in that all of their things that people looked for were kind of more theoretical than actualized. And they've developed their games in the NBA because of that training from Cal, because of the training from the Kentucky program. And it's funny because Cal actually compared Shai to Maxey to Shai. His two comps were Jamal Murray and Shai for him. And the thing is like, I don't think that Shea's available. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying that I think that Sam Presti is enough of a sicko to say, how can I get the number 1 overall pick in 2023? Because I want Victor Wembanyama, because Victor Wembanyama is the best European prospect since Luka Doncic, who is now,
He's so good.
as we just,
so good.
he's insane.
His metrics are off the chart, and he's going to come out. He's going to come into the league, and he's going to be a 15-10 guy already. He's so good, man. And once he puts weight on, it's a wrap. He's so
and that's
good.
The guy that everyone's going to be going for next year. Like, I don't think that I think if you're a rebuilding team and you're out there and you're looking at this draft, you say to yourself, there are some good guys at the top. Like, I think Paolo's going to be good. I think Jabari's going to be good. I think Chet will be pretty good. Like, I'm not saying that those are bad prospects, but they're not in the same class of prospect as Victor Wembanyama. And if you're a rebuilding team like the Thunder, you might look at it and say, how can we get worse for this year so we can have a shot at that next year?
Yeah.
And as much as I love Maxey, like, if your number 1 guy is Maxey, you're not going anywhere. And if your number 1 guy is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you're probably winning at least 25 games. And that is actually detrimental to a team. And like, it's kind of the same situation in Portland, where it's like, if Portland wants to try to tank and get a high pick in 2023, they can't keep Damian Lillard. Like, they just can't. Like, if Dame comes back and he's somewhat himself, they're competing. Like, that's just kind of what is going to happen. And those are the only 2 guys I could realistically think of that would be kind of in that conversation just because of that.
Do you remember when Morey went on, I think it was The Fanatic, and it was like maybe a week. Yeah, it was probably a week before the Harden trade. And he said, and it was basically at that time, he was like, it's like a 9% chance that like Ben goes anywhere right now. Cause like, like just literally blowing smoke up our ass, whatever. But he admittedly was like, listen, I can't tell you who it is, but I offered, for 2 first rounders, 3 second rounders for a guy, and was told no. And like, I really wanted this guy. And if this team had said yes, Ben would have been gone yesterday. My personal guess was that it was SGA. I think that Presti held on to him, but I really think that at that time, Morey called and was like, dude, I'll give you my last 2 first rounders and 3 second rounders and whatever and Ben tonight for SGA. And I think that Presti was like, nah, I think his value is going to be more in the offseason. And I still think that that SGA was the guy. I think SGA was who he called about, and then he's not going to mention it now, but I still think that in my heart of hearts, SGA was the guy that he was talking about.
So, of the guys that were named, like we remember we had our months of just going fucking insane. Like, SGA was one of the names of the guys that kept being brought up that was not like an all-star. Like the majority of guys that were being brought up had either made an all-star team or were all NBA players, or were just guys we were never going to get. Like, it was like, yeah, of course, Luka, like, of course, like guys that like we're never, ever going to get. Tatum, he called Boston, was like, hey, can we have Tatum? Like, all right, not going to happen.
He's like, dude, how much for Jalen? Like, I got Ben and Trash for Jalen. They're like, dude, we'll call you back. Yeah.
In retrospect, we should have taken the Marcus Smart and stuff package for Ben and destroyed the Celtics.
Right.
So that they couldn't go this far. We could have been doing dimensional chess. Exactly. Right. He wouldn't have played. They would have had no chance to get to the conference finals. I'm just saying. But
now we got to watch our rivals play.
Oh, so brutal.
Man.
Oh my God, I'm in pain. We'll get to that later, but I'm writhing in pain over that. But so going back to the Shai thing, like, I think that once again is a long shot. I think all of this is a long shot. I think that his plan is we want to make people think that we want to get a 3rd star.
Mm-hmm.
And that way, we have Tobias as the matching salary. We have Maxey as this prospect. We have some remaining picks. Like, we'll give you whatever you want if we can get that 3rd star, maybe as a way to try to like say like, hey, we're not going to give up Tobias for anything. It might be, he might be trying to fool the market a little bit. But I do think that from all the reporting that came out after the trade deadline, the guy that Embiid wanted was Beal. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, like, I know I've heard Bill Simmons say it. I've heard other
yeah,
reporters suggest it. And like, it sounds like before Beal got hurt, that Beal was the other one that might have been like, remember after the deadline, he said there were the Halliburton rumors, there were the Beal rumors. Then we got Harden, and he was like, there was another deal that fell through last
yeah.
second. And that might have been the Beal deal, because
I think it was Bill.
I'm thinking it's Beal because it's like Joe and him have the connection, like all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But at the same time, Bradley Beal, until Bradley Beal says, I don't want to play for the Wizards, I'm not taking the largest contract in NBA history, basically, to play here for 5 years.
Yeah.
I will believe that when I see it. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I think that they'd probably be better off trying to turn Tobias and the picks and Thibault and whatever into two other starters that they can put with those guys, as opposed to getting Bradley Beal. But if they do get Bradley Beal, I will 100% turn into a Lakers fan, and I will tell myself that we are winning the next 5 titles. And I will have a terminal case of Lakers brain, and we will be a dynasty if we get Bradley Beal. And Maxey is 6 man.
I also, I think I read, it might have been like a month. Actually, before the playoffs, I read that the Wizards were like if he leaves here, we're not entertaining any signing trades. Like, you basically either like he'll leave on his own remission and you got to sign him, but like you're not don't bother calling us and saying what kind of signing trade can we do. So like they're already saying like, dude, like he either becomes the richest basketball player in history, or he goes somewhere else and actually tries to compete for a championship. But I agree with you. I will believe it when I see it, but I do think that the lexicon changed when he hurt his hand, because then it became be a Sixer with a broken hand, or just get it fixed. And I think that he was thinking long term, because if it was something he could have rehabbed through and played through, I think he'd be a Sixer right now. I really do, because I believe the reports of Joe wanting him and Joe calling him and saying, I need you here. But I really think that his hand was hurt enough that he was like, I got to get this taken care of, because I'm sure he's thinking, long term. But
it's also worth noting he would have been able to get the 5-year if he was traded at the deadline.
He could have
got that money here, which is really why that would have been incentivized to make that trade happen.
Which is very right. Yeah. And you mentioned something that I wanted to bring up. I'm glad you mentioned it. You mentioned Maxey, 6th man of the year. And it takes me back to a point that I made a while ago, that this team, the Sixers, as a team and an organization, as a front office, they lack so much creativity, right? And what I mean by that is, look at they're a poor example now, but just overall, look at what the Bucks did last year, right? So they had PJ Tucker, plugged PJ Tucker in, played him, then played him, started him, won a chip with him, and then lost him. And this year, Bobby Portis fit right in. Like, Bobby Portis isn't the reason they lost, but like they tried that. Like, they plugged shit in, they tried it, see what worked, see what didn't work. And look at the Celtics. The Celtics did the same thing. They plugged shit in, see what worked, see what didn't work. And like, look at the Heat and go back. And you go to the teams that are clearly a level above the Sixers. And one of the things they do well is they get creative. They try shit. This is not just a coach thing. It's an organization thing. Like, it's got to come from up top, where the mindset is, this is not our static starting 5. Like, we're going to work to see what works. We're going to see 15 games in. All right, this isn't working. We're 9-6. We can be 10-5. Let's see what works for this. Let's bring this dude off the bench now. And
we're not going to wait until there's a vaccine mandate and Matisse Thybulle has to be pulled from the starting lineup to realize, it's better to start Danny Green, who can shoot a basketball.
Like, what the fuck, man? Right? Why does it take these catastrophes to happen for you to be like, well, let's get a little creative?
Simmons quitting basketball so Tyrese Maxey gets more minutes.
And that's enough, right? So that whole thing, like you traded Ben Simmons, or like you have the first half of the season without Ben Simmons, and then all of a sudden you realize, God damn, like we don't have Ben Simmons rebounding, we don't have Ben Simmons defense on the wing. Maybe we should try to replace that. And you never replace it. I get that. I get what kind of void he is for what he can't do, but like you have to know how much you still depended on him. Like you still depended on what he brought. You still depended on that defense. You still depended on his rebound. Like you still depended on his offensive initiation. Like I just feel like there's such a reactionary team and front office that like everything is damn. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a guy that did that? Like they're like stoners. They're like, yo, like how cool would it be if we had a dude who could get 10 rebounds a game? Like
we're gonna go sign Tristan Thompson this offseason, and I'm gonna have to cancel the podcast.
Yo, I was telling it to my house. I was like, they're gonna sign Tristan Thompson. I'm gonna have a lot of tweets to delete because
I said it the other day. I said, hey, look, at least DeAndre Jordan's a good locker room guy. At least Paul Millsap's a good locker room guy. Everyone hates Tristan Thompson. He cheats on his wife.
Everywhere he goes hates Tristan Thompson. Right?
He ruins locker rooms.
At least DeAndre tells good jokes or whatever he tells.
Yeah, exactly. Like, at least DeAndre is like in Maxey's ear telling him good things. Like he seems like a great dude. Like he's out at the club with Harden. Like I have nothing against DeAndre Jordan the person. Like, but
it reminds me. I was watching. I think it might have been the Matt Barnes, Steve Jackson podcast, and it was I forget who it was telling the story. They were talking about when Dwight Howard first got traded to the Lakers, and he calls Kobe, and Kobe's working out. Kobe's like, yo, like, you know, like glad to have you. I'm excited we doing this. Like, let's win. Like, you know, like it's championship time. They said Dwight's first question was like, yo, what's the LA nightlife like?
Kobe Bryant.
He hangs up and you're like, yeah, the first thing Kobe says was, yeah, this shit ain't gonna work.
Several days into it.
It just reminds me of how fucking dumb this team is, man. Like, imagine Dwight coming here and being like, all right, glad to have you, bro. We gotta grind. This is about to be like, you know, we're getting to a finals this year, and fucking Dwight's like, yo, so what's the nightlife in Philly like?
I'm shocked him and Harden didn't get along better. It'd be a club risque if he was still here, dude. They'd be absolutely killing it.
I wanted to you reminded me of something when you mentioned CP3, but this is a point that I think everyone should keep in mind when you talk about, just make Harden into CP3, or like Harden can just be the CP3 role. CP3 he changed his entire life. Like, I think he's vegan now. He changed the way he worked out. He changed like a lot of his just preparation habits, stuff like that. And like, no offense to James Harden, I don't know James Harden's off-season routine or like lack thereof, but you're basically, it's a lot more than just calling him into your office and saying, yo, I need you to do what CP3 did to add another 5 years into your career. Like,
he'll be like, Chris Paul, my arch enemy.
I'm
not doing it.
Like, wait a minute.
Excuse me. I'll do the opposite. I'll go on an all meat diet. Actually, I'm just gonna eat steak.
You mean my biggest hater? Yeah, thanks. I'm going on keto right now. Don't worry.
Well, I will say, speaking of Chris Paul and Patrick Beverley, the whole situation that happened today with Patrick Beverley basically going on and doing the whole RIP Bozo for 40 straight hours.
Yeah, the whole ether tour. Yeah,
on First Take. So he was talking, him and Harden are boys still, which is Pat Bev's the only teammate that Harden's had before that still loves him for some reason.
Yeah, everybody else hates his guts.
I know, and Pat Bev loves him. They get along great. And one of the things he did say about Harden was, and look, I know Harden's got a lot of shit about going out, and I know that he's been questioned by teammates and he's been questioned by everyone, and they called him, and people thought he was a stat patter and blah blah blah.
Right.
But I will say the one thing that I think that people don't give James Harden enough credit for is that he made himself into one of the 40 best basketball players of all time.
Yeah.
He was a sixth man his first few years in the NBA. Didn't even start until his fifth year in the NBA. Got his own team, became an MVP candidate, became one of the greatest players of all time. And regardless of all of the playoff struggles, all that shit, like, I do think that there is something in James Harden. Like people say, like, he used to be like a crazy workaholic.
Mm-hmm.
And even some of the Nets guys, like when he first got there, said that that's what he was like. The Sixers guy said that. And one of the things Pat Bev said in this interview was, he does not like being embarrassed, basically. And he said, like, the fact that he felt embarrassed and like everything happened, like, he thinks Harden will come back with a new attitude and work really hard this offseason to get in shape and do whatever. I'll see it when I'll believe it when I see it once again. But at the same time, at least maybe he's blowing smoke because he's trying to help out his boy. But at the same time, it did give me a little bit of, maybe I'm just clinging on to any optimism that I can get. But that was good to hear.
I also heard that a lot of his struggles, like in the latter part of the year, were just due to the fact that he spent all off season not really hooping, but just recouping from the hammy, and that the hammy really wasn't right until like really all year. So like that also gave me a bit of perspective too, because like, all right, maybe that's true. Maybe the hammy just wasn't right at all, and maybe the Sixers, I think their vice president, who wrote that book on hamstrings or whatever, like maybe
Simon Rice, that's our boy.
Our Lord and Savior.
Simon.
Maybe Simon, was like, all right, like, dude, this is what the best way we're gonna make it right is to just have you play through it, which is like what they said. He said that like after every game they had him running basically till he couldn't run anymore, to really, really, tire it out, whatever, and like. If I buy that, then this is the summer where you do take your diet serious and you do take your preparation serious and you do say, I'm going to shoot 1,000 jump shots a day. Like, I'm embarrassed. They talking shit. Folks are making memes. They're talking about, I'm going to come back in the training camp, 60 pounds heavier. And like, if that's who we get next year, I'm totally fine with it. Like I at a discount.
Not $50 million a year.
$50 million a year. I fucking tell you that shit right now. Not $50 million a year, but if that's who we get, then I think that's a win. I think that one thing. I guess we can get into doc stuff now too.
Yeah, let's get into the doc stuff.
That one thing that sticks out for me, and a big reason why I don't think Doc is coming back, is him. Embiid and Harden were just one. Embiid just physically and I'm sure mentally was just broken. Like he just couldn't. He didn't have anything left in him, man. And like, much respect to Joe for what he did and as long as he went. But like I just think that they got to a point where I think even they realized that they just didn't have the horses to get it done, and that's a lot for even a guy like Doc to overcome. But I still, my mind will always go back to that scene on the bench where Doc begging them to fight, and both of them just have their heads down. And I'm just like, yeah, dude, I'm turning the channel. I was like, I'm not watching this shit anymore. Like, y'all don't care. I don't care either. But like,
the Heat immediately went on like a 10-0 run. He's like, you gotta fight, and then it's like, and Jimmy Butler hits another shot, and turnover.
You gotta fight for me, guys. You gotta fight. And then right after that, it's a 20-1 Heat run, and then the game's put away. But I feel like, so my theory on that. So you shared yours on the third star. So my theory on the coaching search is that Daryl has very strict orders. And Wendy even hinted at it, but Daryl has very strict orders to try to save money. And so whether that is this way by saying Doc's coming back, I'm totally fine with it. 13 hours after that loss, like already saying, no, Doc's coming back. Like, he's our guy. Right. To basically tell the Lakers, like, you're going to have to pay up if you want him. I still think that, one, that was a business tactic, and two, that eventually, though, when they do look back and review and go through everything that Doc won't be here. I really think whether it's by hook or crook, I don't think he'll be here.
So the thing that really sticks out to me is kind of piggybacking off of what you said, which is when the entire team goes to the press conference and says, "Yeah, we just kind of gave up. We just kind of didn't give a shit."
Right.
Like we could talk about the tactical stuff, we could talk about the lineup stuff, we could talk about the lack of development, we could talk about all the stuff that has driven us crazy about Doc when it comes to coaching this team. He's been good in the regular season. A large part of that is due to the fact that he has Joel Embiid, but also in the regular season, when Joel doesn't play, they compete. I think that he gets them motivated, and he's been good at that. He's generally had good feel he's a good regular season floor raiser as a coach, for sure. When you are in your second year as coach, and the entire team is basically saying, "Yeah, no, they were just tougher than us, and we just didn't give a shit." Like, part of it might be your mental makeup, and another part of it might be, how did you lose motivation in a series you just tied when Joel Embiid came back? And like people have brought this up over the past few days, but like, has there ever been a coach with as much talent as Doc Rivers has had over the last decade that has never made it to a Western Conference Finals?
No, not ever.
Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, Blake Griffin, Chris Paul, DeAndre Jordan when he was still good.
Yep.
Ben Simmons, Joel Embiid, James Harden, Tyrese Maxey. Like, the list goes on and on of how many guys that he's had over the last decade, even the tail end of the Boston years. Like, Doc is just not the guy anymore. And like, I think he would be fine for the Lakers because any LeBron coach team, like, LeBron is largely the coach on those teams.
Yeah, like
a basketball genius. He's a leader. He's arguably the best player of all time. Like, the coach is like, Doc would be good for a team like that because you have the coach on the court. The Sixers need something more than that.
And it goes beyond they just need somebody to yell at them. I've seen a lot of people say that. Oh, they just need somebody to yell at them. They need somebody to get angry at them. Yeah, but it's different than that. They need somebody to hold the stars accountable. Like, that was always the knock on Brett Brown, right? Like, he didn't hold Embiid and especially Simmons accountable, that he babied them and blah, blah, blah. And like, in a way, like, I just think Doc lost the locker room in that same vein. Like, I don't think that he was pulling Embiid and Harden to the side saying, look, like, I need you two to carry game 6. You know, like, I need you two to go in there and get these guys fired up and get in Maxey's face and tell him to get aggressive and get into Tobias's face and say, I need all 48 minutes from you. Like, I don't think Doc did that. I think Doc was like, all right, guys, let's play our game. Let's go. Yeah. So I think that's the kind of coach they need. I think they need a coach who will simply hold their stars accountable and who is fine with trying new stuff. Like, Doc's, the biggest knock we've all had on Doc, at least one of them, is the fact that he's just so stubborn.
Yep.
Like, a lot of his press conferences, it wasn't even about strategy. It was about, I know basketball and you motherfuckers don't, so don't ask me that.
So, pretty much. Derek Ponder, you're an idiot. I'm a basketball genius. Okay.
Right. Like, sit your dumb ass down, Austin. Like, don't ask me any more fucking questions. Would you ask Pop about basketball, Paul? I don't think so. And so, like, I just think that there continues to be a disconnect there, and you have to first realize, and he should know this by now. It's year 2. You have to realize what kind of star you have. Like, Joel Embiid is not the guy to get angry and upset and throw shit on the bench and get in everybody's face and say, yo, like, we're not losing game 6, or we're not going to game 6 against Toronto. We're closing it out in 5. Like, that's just the kind of guy he isn't. You have to realize that, though. I don't think Doc realized it. I think Doc was still saying, him saying fight, fight, fight was just him letting us know that he still didn't have a clue what kind of team he had.
Yeah. I mean, that's definitely true. And one of the things, literally the first week he got here, he said, too, because he wanted to establish the ground rules. up front.
Right.
He said to the whole team, because he saw what happened with the Clippers, which was that the stars and the role players didn't get along there because they felt like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George came in and they got preferential treatment over the rest of the team, which they did because they're stars and that's what happens. And Doc was honest about that. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you need to then – and one of the reasons why I feel as though that they have not said like, yeah, Doc's like there's been no leaks about Doc possibly being fired. All of that shit is because I do genuinely think Joel likes Doc. Like from everything I've heard, like Doc and Joel have a great relationship. Maxey and Doc have a great relationship. Like I think that they have that in mind. And I think look, if they can recreate the roster and have it be a team that is better suited for the playoffs, it's better suited for carrying them in the regular season, and we get a refreshed Harden, and you have Joel happy because he likes the coach and the GM and his teammates and all that stuff. Okay, maybe fine. But all of those things have to go right because Doc Rivers as your coach leaves you very little margin for error since he doesn't give you any tactical advantages on the court. His locker rooms tend to fall apart. There's just like a lot of bad history here when you're going in the Eastern Conference now. Like think about how insane the Eastern Conference is going to be next year. You have the Nets coming back, and even if the Ben situation, if he gets traded, whatever.
And they're going to be pissed off.
Yes. You got an angry Nets team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, maybe. We'll see on that, based on what I've heard. Ben Simmons. So they're and like even if Ben gets traded and they get role players or they get DeAndre Ayton or they get whatever it is, like there are moves to be made for the Nets.
My guess is that they do a sign and trade with Ayton. And I'll be honest with you, man, the Nets with DeAndre Ayton are actually way scarier than the Nets with Ben Simmons, if you ask me.
Absolutely.
So
I agree.
You got that. And not to cut you off, but can you continue on with your point? I mean, a lot of these teams are going to be better.
The team we just lost to, the Heat, like they're not going anywhere. Like I think with a healthy Joel, we probably still win the series, but like they're still a tough out. The Raptors are going to be better. The Celtics are going to be better. Like I think you're looking at an Eastern Conference.
The
we
Bucks.
didn't even mention the Bucks, who won the title last year. And if Chris Middleton doesn't get hurt, they're probably in the finals at least again this year. Like the Eastern Conference is going to be stacked from 1 to 5, and you're going to have, we'll see from a talent perspective what Morey, because like the pressure is on Morey now to build a roster that can fucking last in the regular season and translate into the playoffs. And then you just look at the coaches and you go, well, Udoka's a better coach. Spoelstra's a better coach. Bud is a better coach. I mean, Bud has his faults as a coach, but he's definitely a better coach than Doc at this point. And then you have, I'm forgetting someone out of this list. But my point is that there's like Nick Nurse. And so you have Nurse too. And it's like, and then you look at Doc and you go, I don't feel great about the coaching matchups. And when the talent gaps are what they are, that you need to get any coaching advantage you can. Like, I think the only coach he's better than out of all these coaches is Steve Nash.
Yes, I would say so.
Yeah. And I'm like, it just doesn't make me feel good going into next season, knowing that like when it comes to the playoffs, we're going to have a disadvantage with Doc Rivers as coach as opposed to the other.
I also think, I think back to, people saying the East is wide open, and to a degree I understood, but I also think LeBron and the Warriors really they spoiled us because they made us think that it's very easy to make it to the finals.
Yes,
like just look at the Bucks, dude. Before the Bucks won last year, they were second and third round outs. And again, they won a championship last year. This year, second round out. Like, it's
they have the best two-way player in the game. Yeah. And like injuries happen. Like Chris Middleton got hurt, but like injuries happen every year in the playoffs.
It is very, very, very tough to make it to the finals and let alone win in this league, man. And I think LeBron and the Warriors spoiled us. So like you cannot rest on your laurels. All these teams are going to be retooling and readjusting and looking for the young guns and getting more dogs and getting tougher on defense and
I need to
getting
hear your dog. I need to hear your one dog, because you came on the podcast last year and you said PJ Tucker, and I didn't want PJ Tucker, and you were right. And I need to hear your dog who you want the Sixers to go after this offseason. Is
I
there
think
one that you have in mind?
it's gotta be TJ Warren. It's
TJ
gotta be
Warren.
TJ
Okay.
Warren. I think that I don't. So shout out to Will Rucker, but Will mentioned him as a starter. I would probably I need to know how good the fit or what kind of condition the foot is in first.
Yeah.
But I think he's a guy who would be on a reclamation path. Like he's one dude who I think would be really pissed off to show the league that he still got it. I don't know if another PJ Tucker exists. I wanted him last year because I don't think that he's got another run in him after this year. Like age catches up with everybody.
Yeah.
And like even, I just think that as good as he is and as hard as he plays, even he eventually is going to lose a step or three.
Yeah. He's like 30. He's going to be 36 soon.
Yeah, he'll be 36. Or
Pat Bev's getting up there in age. Like the guys that we all want. Yeah.
He's another guy, and like respect to everybody who wants him, but like he's a dude who also is getting up there in age, man. Like they're all dogs, but we need some younger dogs. If you look at Memphis, man. Like they're 1 through 15 is all dogs, and like
they're 25. Like they're all
right.
All right, I
and
looked it up.
25.
I was curious to see, because my dog, and I'm going to save some of this for the podcast that I'm doing later in the week with Marty, but my dog, my one guy that I think if he is available via trade, this is not a free agent, but my one dog is a guy that we know. And I know that he struggled a little bit in the playoffs this year, other than hitting all of his threes, but defensively he didn't look great, is Jay Crowder. I think that if the Suns blow it up, or if the Suns make some moves, they got to pay Cam Johnson and Mikal Bridges and potentially DeAndre Ayton or whoever they replace with DeAndre Ayton. Like Jay Crowder is the one guy. He's 31 still. He's still not super old. He's 31 going on 32. Like I think he's probably got 2 or 3 years left in the tank. Yeah. He's a guy that, like, if we trade Tobias, he's a perfect starting four for this team. We'll shoot a ton of threes. We'll play competitive defense. We'll keep the ball moving. Like he's the prototypical kind of guy, and he's a dog.
He rebounds, and he's a very tough basketball player. He's a tough dude. You're not going to talk him down or back him down from anything. And he's a guy who I think people listen to in the locker room. He's got a lot of playoff experience. He's got a lot of in-season experience. He would definitely be a guy that I would shoot for. And I agree with you. A lot of people said last night that this is probably the last iteration of that Suns team that we'll see. I think they do have a lot of questions. I jokingly said they had to decide which 2 wings to send to Morey, but I do think that they have a lot of questions that need to be answered, and it does start with what's our makeup next year. Monty Williams actually said something interesting. He was saying how looking back, he's not quite sure just how much he set up the young guys to have success. What did he do on offense that made them gun shy all of a sudden? Or you know what I mean? And that's the kind of perspectives that you want from a coach.
Yeah.
It sucks that it's got to come after the worst loss in playoff history, but still, you got to decide what went wrong with this year. We lost in the second round, and we were in the finals last year.
He kind of even said it in that thing where he was like, I kind of ran them into the ground during the regular season, and now it's the playoffs. Everyone's tired. Chris Paul's 37. The Suns had, once again, when you don't have a superstar player, when you don't have a Luka Doncic or a Giannis or whoever, you don't have the margin for error that those teams have, because the superstar can cover up a lot of those weaknesses. If Devin Booker and Chris Paul aren't firing on all cylinders, then the Suns' offense is going to look stagnant, and it looked horrendous last night. Literally, the Mavericks went on a 45-3 run in the second and third quarter. 45-3. I've never seen anything like it. I am still that is the most shocking Game 7 I've ever seen in my entire life. of
It
any
just,
sport.
64 wins is cool, but when you look like that in the second round of the playoffs, it doesn't mean anything.
Yep.
Like, because in a vacuum, seeding really didn't matter that much. Like, you were going to have to go through the Warriors regardless, and you either we're going to have to go through the Mavericks or you're going to have to go through the Grizzlies, and like the team, like you were saying, the top 5 teams are the top 5 teams. So like, if we know that already, dude, when there's a month left in the season, I'm taking the foot off the pedal. Like, all right, we're gonna be a top
Absolutely.
4 seed. I believe in you guys. I believe in the system. We'll let the chips fall where they may.
Well, my theory on it is that they just had too many former Sixers. Like they had Dario Saric, who was not playing, admittedly. Technically, Mikal Bridges was a Sixer at one point. You have Landry Shamet. You have wasn't there a fourth guy that was on the team that was a former Sixer? They have so many former Sixers. Monty Williams is the coach. He was an
Marty was
assistant
the
coach.
coach. That
Just
Dario, Shamit, like, yeah, they were.
too
They,
many
you know what?
Sixers vibes. And
We
not even we look.
apologize.
My mom texted me, and my mom doesn't watch NBA other than she watches the Sixers because of the podcast. But she texted me. She was at a bar, and they were out to eat. And she texted me and said, "Are you watching the Dallas Mavericks
Yeah,
Phoenix Suns game? I've never seen anything like." That's how bad it got.
yeah, it got it. I was I turned it for a second because I was checking up on something else, and my uncle texted me, was like, "Yo, like, I'm out, and the bar just turned the game off." And I was like, "What happened?" He was like, "Check the score." That's when they were up 30, and I was like, "You gotta be fucking kidding me!" I was not expecting it. I was like, "This game's gonna go down to the wire, and then Luka's gonna beat them." I did think Luka was gonna beat them, but I did not see that happening.
I didn't think he was going to be laughing them off the court. I mean, Luka is a super villain on a level that I have never. I respect it. I have to. All I could do is respect it because the dude is a fucking baller. But
Yeah,
I mean, he was laughing at. And I know like everyone's getting their jokes off now. The Suns seem to be the most hated team in the NBA. It seemed like Pat Bev going off today.
yeah,
Luka was
yeah.
getting his shot. There were players on Twitter getting their shot. Anthony Edwards. Did you see Anthony Edwards' video we posted?
Yeah, the video was so funny when he was like, "Yo, they were talking so much shit, and this what happened." Yo, I love it. First of all, I love Ant.
He's
But
amazing.
I think that it's so funny because of all the teams, I didn't expect the Suns to be the team, but it's hilarious to see that everybody fucking hated their guts.
I know that people real. I mean, if you think about it, they do like they're very good, very talented team, but they do have Chris Paul, who's known as one of the biggest assholes in NBA history. Devin Booker, who's a cocky dude. Like I'm sure that everyone was waiting for this pack to go up. And once
Yeah,
again, I said last year, like, I didn't believe that the Suns were a legit finals team, even though they made the finals and they almost won the finals. Like, I felt like the West was like the Oregon Trail last year and everyone died of dysentery on the way to the finals.
yeah,
But I didn't expect them to look this bad. Like, I
yeah,
expected them to come out and put up a fucking fight in this game. Like you said, I thought the Mavs were probably going to win. Like, before the series, when we did the podcast, when I predicted with Chiodo, I picked the Suns in 7. But I said, if you get to a game 7, you have the best player. And a lot of the times the best player wins. And with how he played in that series, Luka playing in that series, I felt like the Mavs were going to win yesterday. But I mean, in a way that I've never seen a team as good as Phoenix too. That was the thing that
yeah.
blew my mind was like, this was one of the best records of all time in the regular season. And they just completely fell fucking flat on their face in a way
Well,
that I could not imagine.
well, I think their vibes were off from the get go because
The
Monty
Aiton
even
thing.
said that Aiden only playing 10 minutes was an internal decision. And, people are like, well, they should have benched CP and not Aiden. I think that there's been some shit with Aiden and them since last season. And, obviously it boiled over to this season and obviously the playoffs. But, yeah, I'm sure he can't wait to get out of there, and they probably can't wait to get rid of him. But
Yeah.
I think their vibes were incredibly off. And I do think that there was some cockiness, or like so much cockiness, to where they said, all we got to do is show up type stuff. We'll show up, we'll beat them. Like Book saying, oh, I love game sevens. Like, bro, you went 0 for 11 with your backcourt mate in the first half. Like, I don't think you love game sevens that much.
I don't think he's ever played a game 7. I think that was the first one. So he was probably like, I can't.
Which is very weird to me. Like,
yeah,
I think that they're another team that has some internal reflection to do this summer. Like they really are on fraud watch. As I told Mike Meach, shout out to Meach, that last night. I was like, that their whole team is on fraud watch, because they looked completely different than even the 64 win team from the season. And it does beg the question, like, so here's like, football is different because it's only 17 weeks. Every game matters. Like you lose one game in September and that could fuck up your whole season. But like in the NBA, it's different because you lose 5 in a row in December and nobody bats an eye. You can still be the number 1 seed in the East.
Bro, the Celtics were like the 10 seed and they're in the Eastern Conference Finals.
We were laughing, remember? Because we were like, oh, they're gonna be a play-in team, like
right,
blah, blah, blah. Like,
second straight year, LOL. They're gonna break up the Jays, all that stuff. Oh, by the way, they have a coach who actually gives a shit.
Yeah, like,
and that helped a lot.
Like P.S. Like their coach called out Jason Tatum in the middle of the year, and Tatum made the adjustments. So like, oh
yeah. And I clowned him for it. I was like, oh, this is going to be a disaster. Yeah. He's calling out the players. He's whatever. Yeah. But fuck, it worked, dude. They knew. I got to give them credit.
Yeah.
But conference finals predictions. What do you think is going to happen? We have our tortured series of the Heat versus the Celtics, the team that just beat us, the team that has our former star player in Jimmy Butler versus the guy that we passed on technically, kind of. Like, we did pass on him, but like, we were never going to actually get him in the draft anyway.
Yes,
and Jason Tatum and our arch rival of the Boston Celtics. So what do you think is going to happen there?
I think, as much as I don't have a rooting interest, I think Jason Buford said he hopes for an earthquake. I also heard for an earthquake in this series. I think that health is going to matter the most, and I think defense matters. As much as it pains me to say, man, that Boston defense is tremendous.
Crazy.
And they're very, very, very tough to score on. And I think when you get the Heat, when you turn the Heat into a one-man game, in other words, when you make it so Jimmy's the only one doing everything, they're actually not their best version of themselves.
Yeah.
So like, if Jimmy's averaging 30 a game, I think the Heat actually lose that series in 4 games, because that's not the best version of the Heat. And I think that's what
Game 4 in Philly. Game 4 in Philly was Jimmy's best scoring game, I think. I think he had 40 points and they lost.
Right.
Because we were just like, we're not going to give you anything but these inefficient shots that you want.
Right. Like if you want to hit banked in threes, go right ahead. We'll take those all night. So I think that I think this is going 7 games, and I think the Celtics are going to win. I do think defense is going to be the determining factor. It sucks, man. I hate having to pick either of these teams to do anything.
I know.
I think that we are going for, I think, Celtics in 7. I like the Warriors in 6. And I think the Warriors are somehow, some way, are going to win another fucking championship this year.
So before the playoffs, I picked the Celtics to win the East. I felt like everything you just said. Plus, they've had great injury luck other than the Robert Williams injury, which they've been able to survive because the Bucks were missing Chris Middleton. They're going up against their 3rd straight team now that is mixed. Say what you will about Ben Simmons and this version of Kyle Lowry, but they would be rotation players on these teams, and they were all missing, plus Chris Middleton, who was the 2nd best player on the finals team last year. I think that the Celtics are the best team left, I'm going to be honest. I emotionally hedged on the Celtics when I thought they were looking great in that Bucks series. I put some money on them to win the championship. I think that I think that what's going to happen is I actually do think this series is going to go 7. I think Miami is going to win game 1 because it's a schedule loss.
Yeah, it's a schedule loss. Yeah.
Celtics coming off an emotional win. 2 days later, you got to travel to Miami. Miami's rested. They've had 4 or 5 days off.
Yeah.
Like I think that the Heat win that. I think the Celtics steal one there. I think they kind of go back and forth. I think it probably goes 6 or 7. Yeah. I'll take Celtics in 7, but I think they win convincingly in a few of those games and prove that they are the better team, and the Heat steal a few. Yeah. And then if you look at it from the other end, I'm gonna go Warriors in 7, but I feel less confident about that than I did before last night because I think that Luka's the best player left in the playoffs. Yeah. And it's crazy for me to say that because I've been the biggest Steph Curry guy forever. Like, I think that Steph Curry is underrated still. Yeah. And I think that Luka's the best player left in the playoffs. And I think Steph and Tatum are in that second tier. And the way that Jimmy's been playing, obviously, I want to see Jimmy against this Boston defense. Yeah. Because it's easy to do it when you're going up against Tobias Harris. Let's see how you do it when you're going up against Marcus Smart. Right. And Jason Tatum and these lockdown defenders and
Grant Williams and dudes are getting in your face and they got guys that get into your grill and they're okay doing that. And you brought up the Robert Williams point. They actually hid him for 2 games. I think he could have came back sooner, but remember we just talked about it, like being fucking creative. They hid him for 2 games because they had 2 other dudes that they didn't mind playing. They had 2 other bigs they didn't mind running. And like, that's the shit that pisses you off about like a DAWGS system, because if that wasn't be with an MCL or a bruised knee, we'd be like, oh, we're fucked, dude. You know, we can't hide him for 2 games. We need him to drag his one leg out there because we have no one else that we have any faith in, or no one else that has any any kind of actual experience because we only played 1 center all year. Like, right. That kind of stuff is how these teams get to this point. But I agree, like I said, I agree with all your points. And I think that I'll be interested to see how the Warriors, how Steve Kerr choose to defend Luka. I don't quite know. Like, you're obviously immediately your mind goes toward Draymond, but I don't think Draymond. I think Draymond's a little long in the tooth for Luka right now.
I mean, there's no way to guard Luka. He's an unguardable player. Like, he's reaching LeBron levels of unguardable because it's like, okay, you want to switch onto Luka, he'll roast whoever you switch onto him. You want to run drop coverage on Luka, okay, he'll hit pull-up threes in your face. Okay, you want to you switch a small onto him, he'll post them up. You switch a big onto him, he'll cook them in space. Like, there's no way to guard this guy. And like he didn't even in that series, he was an amazing scorer, but we didn't even see like the Luka playmaking engine that he can be if the defense decides to send all of their guys at him and just put 2 or 3 on him. Like
the crazy thing is
so many counters, it's insane.
The crazy thing about that is this is probably their worst version. Like, this is their worst roster right here. And that's scary to think about. In the West, that's scary to think about. We got our own shit to worry about in the East. But like, if you're a team in the West, you got to deal with the fact that this is absolutely Luka's worst roster right now.
I think they're gonna make a push to try to get like Rudy Gobert or like someone that is like a second guy that you can put with Luka that makes more sense than Porzingis did.
Yeah. I think that they would. I think they're gonna make a push for Rudy. I've heard, I hear a lot of that stuff. I think they're gonna make a push for him. I think there's a bunch of nice role guys who make a lot of sense for them. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went and got another running, jumping dude who Luka can just throw lobs to all day.
Yeah, I mean, I'm honestly like shocked that I'm saying this, but I actually think like right now, once again, I picked the Celtics to win the finals. Like, I think the Celtics are going to win the finals, and just emotionally hedge on that right now, guys. Like, just put your money down on the Celtics winning the finals so you don't feel as bad when it happens. Yeah. But I weirdly think that, like, how every time we play the Mavericks, we're like, how are we so good against the Mavericks? Like, even with Luka, we've always, like, they've been the one Western Conference team we've always played well against. It's the opposite for the Celtics. The Mavericks are the one, they have no answer for Luka.
Zero.
And it's weird because they're such a dominant defensive team, and even with Robert Williams when they were all healthy, Luka went in there and played amazingly. They somewhat shut down Tatum, and they won in Boston like 2 months ago, and like they were the only team during that stretch that was able to win. So if the Mavericks can get out, I think they have a legit shot to win the title, which is crazy because I think they only have one top 40 player right now in Luka, and that's how amazing he's been.
It's nuts to think about. And it goes back to our original point when we started this whole thing that like you have to continue to churn and you have to continue to go all in because all it takes is 1 year. And like as good as everyone looks, the league's still wide open. Like one concise summer of some very, very well thought out moves, and you're in the ECF next year, and like that's really what you want. Like you want to shine, you just want to shine it, right? And like I don't know. Like I know that Maury wants it. I know that he'll do whatever within power to do it, but I don't know how serious I take them if they really do bring Doc back.
Same.
And I guess that's what I'll end on is that like I will know how serious they actually are if Doc is the coach at Trent.
I agree. That's exactly how I feel. Is like kind of like if Doc's the coach, I'm not going to feel great about this team. A lot of things are going to have to go right for me to buy back in. Yep. If we promote Sam Cassell, or we go get Darvin Ham or one of these assistant coaches that like we just like believe in and like can make and have a system and like play the young guys and develop guys, I'm 100% all the way back in if it does happen. But so I appreciate your time. Thank you so much for coming on. I will put the links to Zoe's work in the description, and I'll talk to you again sometime soon. Hopefully next time we talk, the team will be filled with dogs.
Yeah, always a pleasure, brother. We are very much dog pilled. Thank you for having me on. Thank you everybody for listening. Free Pooh Shiesty, free YSL.
Yes, sir.
Rights to RickySanchez.com/newsletter. And yeah, man, ball. We talked about this the first time I came on, but it's always a pleasure, dude. It's always nice to see people that you enjoy and you root for have success. So whenever I can stop by, you got my time, brother.
Thanks, bro. I really appreciate that.
All right, dude.